Welcome, Caroline. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Days of Wonder. Nice.
Thank you so much.
Most anticipated sticker that you put on here.
Yes.
I love that.
I'm going to tattoo that on my forehead.
Okay, can you please tell listeners what Days of Wonder is about?
Okay. The front story is that Days of Wonder is about the afterlives of two 15-year-old kids who were madly in love, who were trying to be separated by the boy's father, and they were both accused of an attempted murder. And the only problem is neither one of them remembers what really happened that night. So the boy goes free and the girl gets 25 years. And she's early released from a technicality. And when she's early released, she's desperate to find out what happened to her boyfriend who vanished, what happened to the child she had when she first got into prison, and what really happened that night. So there's a kind of interesting backstory, which is I was sitting having lunch with a friend of mine, this woman that all my friends had told me, oh, you have to know this woman. She's so great. She's so wonderful. I thought, great. I love women friends. So I met this woman. And after we'd known each other for 2 years, she said, I have to tell you something. And I said, okay, what? And I was hoping, oh, please don't be an illness. And she said she committed a murder when she was 15. She actually did it. She knew it was wrong. She was 16. She was a car without brakes, and she went to prison for it. She was in prison for 5 years. And when she got out, she changed her identity and she was determined to become a good person. And she did. She's so beloved. She got a job, she educated herself. The only thing she couldn't get over was that she felt she had this secret and she couldn't tell people. She
Mhm.
felt she couldn't be forgiven for it. So she was fine until she was 40 years old when somebody found out and they outed her. And she lost friends, she lost jobs, she
Wait, the,
lost
the
just
actual woman.
the actual woman. They
Oh my
outed her.
gosh. Okay.
Yep. So she was just like devastated. She said, okay, I'm going to have to do this again. And she did it again. She took on a new identity, moved, took on a new persona or whatever. And she was just very guarded. She never had a close relationship after that with, a sexual partner. She just kept her women friends close. And after she told me, I just said, I love who you are now, and who you were is not who you are now. And
Mm.
you could see like the relief was, so I wanted to write about that, but I wanted to keep her privacy. So I vowed that I would never mention her name, and I never have. Um, and that I would change the story. So I took her story, and first I made it an attempted murder instead of a murder. Then I still had like two young kids, but I made it more of a Romeo and Juliet story
Mhm.
because I'm a sap for those kind of stories. And as I was writing it, I started like putting in other stuff. My mother's stories started coming up, and by the time I was done, it had almost the only thing that it had of my friend was, that longing to be forgiven, um, and that attempt to try to live a different life. And that
Wow.
was it.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Well, there's so much in the story. Not only when you say the Romeo and Juliet thing, you have this great scene where Jude meets Red, as we'll call her,
Yes.
her nickname before Ella changes her hair and all of that after prison is, to change her identity. But as a native Upper East Sider myself, I found this quite amusing. So can I just read like a little section from
Sure, sure,
the Dalton
sure.
party. I did
Oh,
not go
yeah, yeah,
there, but
yeah. I
um,
had a Dalton boyfriend when I was
you did?
younger.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is you have a dual timeline here, and this is what
Yeah.
actually happens from in the back. Ella held her breath, tugged up her skirt to shorten it, and then, along with her two best friends, Suze and Christina, walked toward the high rise on East 76th. She looked up at the ornate carvings on the limestone building and felt dizzy. Everything in the Upper East Side seemed so clean and empty compared to other areas of the city, particularly Queens. The sidewalks looked bleached. Every tree was surrounded with bright flowers and gated with wrought iron. People here were so dressed up they looked polished, wearing fancy fabrics and walking fancy dogs who sometimes had jeweled collars and even little rubber boots over their paws. Ella had no idea what to think of all this. And then the next paragraph, she had no idea what to think of this event either. Billy, Sue's cousin, had told Suze that his parents were in Tahiti all weekend. He was throwing a party, putting it on his dad's card, and he wanted her to come. Bring your friends, he said.
I do want to say that the Upper West Side is pretty gentrified too. That a lot of New York is like that now, but I just had to sort of boost it up a little.
Yeah. It's also not that clean right now, but that's okay. There's like garbage everywhere. It's fine. No, but this whole lifestyle and someone sort of from the outside looking in and her
Right.
feeling like so out of place. And of course, we've all felt so out of place. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine anyone who hasn't had that feeling. I know I have, where you go into an environment and you feel like the odd one out. And then all of a sudden she gets like recognized by this guy
Right.
and they feel this connection and she can't even really believe it. So tell me about that. And was that what it was like with your Dalton boyfriend?
It was like that for me. We actually, I was a little older than Ella, and we actually moved into this fabulous apartment. It was on the Upper West Side, though. He had gone to Dalton, and it had, I was living in a crummy little one bedroom, not one bedroom, it was just a studio that had sloping floor and mice and stuff. And all of a sudden, I was living in a four-bedroom apartment overlooking the park at night, and we had two doormen and they knew me by name, and I was just sort of astonished. And his parents were extremely wealthy and my parents were not. I was sort of a working class girl growing up, and I was kind of dazzled, and I didn't know exactly how to act a lot of times. And I remember his mother took me aside once and said, "I have to take you shopping. You're not dressing well." And I mean, that might have been like, I don't want to make a blanket statement that is like all people who went to Dalton, but it was like that specific moment. And I just never forgot it. It was strange. And when we broke up, I was really sad to leave the apartment, not because it was so big and beautiful and was like right by the park, which certainly mattered, but because I really liked the doorman. I mean, they were my friends. They would, I would like come in crying from a fight or something, and they would
Oh,
be really nice and say, "Sit down. I won't open the doors until you've calmed yourself down." And I thought that was really lovely. And I
oh
miss
my
that.
gosh.
I miss that.
It's so funny because two other books that I am interviewing authors for this week. There's one book called Welcome Home, Caroline Klein, and in it is a scene which almost could have been from your life, where she's dating the wealthy young guy from New York and envisioning these like amazing vacations and this lifestyle, and he breaks up with her, and she's like, okay, like now I'm on my friend's couch in Queens, and
Yep.
like this is not exactly what I thought my life was gonna be. So
I know it's very weird. And I'll tell you, I this guy also, he went into finance, and so he had a whole lot of money. He used to say, "You're a writer, and I'm going to be a writer when I have enough money." And I said, "Well, you work on Wall Street. What's enough money?" And he said, "Well, I have to have like $5 million in the bank." And I, who had $2,000 in the bank at the time, thought, "Oh, okay." And the funny thing was that I met my husband Jeff after him, and I really, really liked Jeff right on the spot. And when I told him that I met somebody, he said, "Well, what does he do?" And I said, "Well, he's a rock and roll journalist." And there was this look on this guy's face, and he said, "You're leaving me for a rock and roll journalist?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I am." And the thing was, I ended up fixing up with another friend of mine, and they were happy and they were fine. But he never could. He kept bringing that up, like, "You left me. Do you know what you could have had?" And I said, "Well, yeah, and I do think about it sometimes, but it's not everything. It's not
wow.
everything."
Wait, what happened to that guy now? Do you have any idea?
Yes, I actually got an email from him a few years ago, and he said, "Why don't we meet for a drink? I know the mixologist." That was the word he used. "I know the mixologist at I forget what hotel it was some fancy hotel, and we can talk." And I thought about it, and then I thought, you know what, I don't really want to meet him. So I told him no, and he was fine about it. He's married to a socialite, no, I think, and he has a bunch of kids, and he was an interesting guy because he actually came from no money and he built himself up. So
Mm.
that's why those kinds of things were so important to him, I think.
Hmm. Wow.
A good sort, just not my sort.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. well, this is like the movie version of your teenage years here coming back or whatever, early 20s.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, Ella takes a totally different turn in life and does not, you
Mhm.
know, just happily wander off with a rock and roll journalist, but instead does try to, get a new identity and a new job as a writer, but doing the advice column, which is really interesting. How did you think of that, by the way, as a plot device?
Well, I needed a job that someone could do that couldn't do anything else. And I know a lot of people who do advice columns, and they're wonderful. I mean, I'm friendly with Eugene Carroll, and she's just hilarious. And Rick Moody does these wonderful advice columns where he used to through a magazine. Um, and I thought this will be really fun to write. And so I wrote a few of them, and actually my editor hated the ones I originally wrote. He said, "These are very good. This isn't very good advice. Can't you do better?" And I thought, "Oh my God." So I went back and I tried to do better, and I had to rewrite them a couple times too, because it's hard to give good advice because you have to sound smart and you have to do this. And I thought that was the perfect odd thing for someone who had been in prison to give advice, and she ended up giving decent advice.
I found her relationship with her mom to be just very poignant, right? The mom obviously has been her crusader while she was in prison, just patiently waiting and doing what she could. And then finally she gets out of prison and she's like ready to start their lives together. But meanwhile, Ella is an adult and is like,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
bye.
different.
Oh my gosh. And that scene you have her mom, crying at night in the other room, it broke my heart. Oh my gosh.
Oh, just, my son is 27, and when he left for college, you want them to go out in the world, you want them to be happy, but you also want them to always be cuddling with you.
Mhm.
And it's absolutely a heartbreaking thing because it's like you knew them when they were kids and now they're adults and you don't know them that much. And I
Mm.
wanted to write about that in a sympathetic way because that's what it is to be a mother. Your kids are all still home, right?
Well, I have 2 who go to boarding school, so I know
They
it's
go to
not the
boarding school.
same, but,
It's not this, yeah, but it's still like, it's hard. It's hard
yes,
because when they're young, they're with you all the time,
yeah,
all the time. And also, Ella's mother was really my mom. And, I
okay.
used to tell my mom's stories. And my mother was like that. She was incredibly loving, but she always thought I was too independent, which
Mhm.
I wasn't. I wasn't independent at all because she wanted her daughters, to be girlfriends, to be
Mm,
with her all the time. And I just couldn't do that. So, and it's hard when you love somebody like I love my mom and you couldn't give them what they wanted,
yeah.
but that's part of life.
How did you make that okay? Like, how did you not feel the guilt, or did you feel the guilt, or, like, how
I
much
felt
therapy did this take?
I felt really guilty, of course, but what I did is, I could always talk to my mom and I sat her down and I said, "Look, I really love you. You're a wonderful mother." I said, "But I don't really need a mother right now. And we can have a close relationship, and I'd really like you to be my friend." And she said, "I'm not your friend, I'm your mother," which was really difficult. So I had to sort of set boundaries. I mean,
Mhm.
because she was like calling 50 times a day. And
Mm,
I just would preface things by saying, "I really love you, but I can't talk now. I have to run out and do an interview, or I have a meeting here, or I have to do something else." And after a while, she kind of grudgingly
mm,
accepted it, though she never liked it. She never liked it. So I wanted Ella's mom to accept it a little bit more,
interesting.
in hopes that that relationship would, expand. And I think it will.
So when you're writing, do you for this like, for saying that Helen is really your mom, did you know that going into this book that you were gonna have a character who is similar to your mom, or did your subconscious just kind of take over and you're like, "Oh, I just wrote my mom as a character in this book?"
The subconscious took over, and it was so surprising because I thought, "Oh my god, I'm writing about my mom." And I write about her a lot, and it's always my subconscious. And I think it's because my mom died a few years ago, and this is my way of having her still alive.
Mm,
I mean, I just keep thinking she would love this if she were alive. She would be so proud, and she would tell everybody and say, like, that's me, and da da da. And I just feel it's like an homage to her. And but it was totally subconscious on my part. And then once I got into it, I thought, okay, I might as well like dive in and make it even more so. So I did.
wow. So funny what our brains do, right?
Yeah.
When you're like
Does
kind
that
of
happen to you? Does that happen
well,
to
I
you?
was literally just I did an event with Danny Shapiro earlier today, and she was saying the same thing, that, it's just the characters
It's just
take over,
happens.
and that's how it's supposed to be, though. That means you're doing it right.
Right. Right.
Um, so another element of the story, which is also heartbreaking, is that Ella gave up her we learned this early, I don't think this is a spoiler, but that Ella had to
That's not a spoiler.
right. Ella gave up her daughter and didn't somehow the press, by the way, did not get a hold of this while she was in prison, which is a remarkable feat. But then and she, searches and finds out the adoption agency and they will not tell her, but she, sneaks a peek and realizes they're in Ann Arbor and so off she goes. But yet, even though she wanted it's like you can't really believe when you're reading the book that a decision like that for some piece of your flesh and blood that you could sign any sort of paper to prevent you from seeing them for the rest of your lives. I mean, it's almost I know that's a convention. I know adoption is a thing, I'm not silly,
It's
but it's
it's
crazy really, right? When you
it's
think about how
It's
life
horrible.
yeah.
It's horrible. I mean, after we had my son, I couldn't have any more kids, and we wanted more kids. So we tried to adopt, and we tried open adoption, domestic, and we tried international adoption. And the international adoption just didn't work out. So we decided to do domestic. And what happened that just made me crazy is I would talk to all of the birth mothers, and they were really upset. They said, well, you're never going to love my child as much as your biological child. And I kept saying, but that's not true. If I thought that was true, I wouldn't be attempting to do that. And I remember we finally got a match with this wonderful woman in Montana. She was a nurse, she was educated, she really liked me, she really liked Jeff. We had all these conversations. And she said, you know what? I think you're going to be parents of my daughter. And as soon as she said that, I started loving that child. And we were waiting a week because we were supposed to fly out. And when you're working through an adoption agency, you can't they contact you through an 800 number. You cannot contact them. She never called us. She just never called us. And I called the adoption agency and said, what happened to her? And they said, we don't know. Sometimes this happens. It happens a lot. And I said, well, why does it happen? Did she change her mind? Can I talk to her? Did she? And the adoption agency said, sometimes it's a scam and sometimes it's not. And I was so upset and I was mourning that child so much that I didn't even know that I thought was going to be mine, that I just said to Jeff, I can't do this. Let's just count our blessings. We have one gorgeous son and we'll be fine. And I never looked back. And still to this day, I think about that kid. And that kid, I never saw the baby. But so I wanted to write about that. And that was another thing. I didn't realize I was writing about it until I got into it, because I was thinking, well, how do you deal with why she'd feel this way and how the adoptive mom would feel, and all those feelings just rushed back. And I thought, oh, when you think that the baby is going to be yours, no matter whose it is, it's yours. Only it isn't. So that was tough. That was tough for me to write.
Ugh. Do you feel like you've made some sort of peace with it, having written it?
Yeah, I have. I have. And I also, there's a lot of things. I mean, I lost a child 4 months into a pregnancy also, which was just, they always tell you like at 3 months, that's the safe mark, right? Where you can like go and tell everybody. So I was so happy and I told everybody and I bought all these clothes and I went in for my fourth month checkup, and the doctor said, I'm really sorry, there's no heartbeat. And I kept saying, it's 4 months, it's 4 months. And I remember from that loss, like people say all sorts of things because they don't know what to say. I mean, some people would say, well, at least you could get pregnant, so you can get pregnant again. Or people would say, well, you didn't really know the baby, or all kinds of things that they're trying to be nice. And the only person who got it was my friend, Joe Fisher, who I've known for 8 million years. And she said, look, I know you're always going to consider that baby your first child. And when she said that, I thought, that's exactly right. I do consider that baby my first child. And I always think about that child, and, wish it well. And it's just sort of something you deal with. And then, Max was born a year after that, and that helped a lot. But it's sort of like I always felt, well, he had a sibling. They just never got to meet.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sorry, and I know last time on the podcast, or was it just when we were talking? I don't know. You shared your story of the trauma of the childbirth and all of the. Oh my
I
gosh, you've
know.
been through a lot, Caroline. Oh my
But
gosh.
I stay happy. I
I
mean,
know it's good. It's just,
you have to, you have to. I mean, that's what life is. It's, you can take two directions when something awful happens. You can get bitter and lock yourself away, or you can say, okay, how can I proceed from this? And I prefer to do the how can I proceed from this route.
wow. The only way, what is it? The only way through is through. I don't know. Only way out is
Yeah, the only answer is true.
yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Um, talk for 2 minutes about your work with the Mighty Blaze and founding that and all your author advocacy and helping and expansion and, tell
Okay.
everybody about that.
Well, the day the pandemic hit, I was supposed to fly on the start of a new tour for With or Without You to talk to 100 librarians. And Algonquin called me up and said, no, your whole tour is canceled. Everything is canceled. It's locked down. And when I got off the phone, I said, nothing is canceled. Nothing is canceled. And I had practiced this speech with hand movements. So I made a video of it and sent it to Algonquin. And they said, this is really good. We're going to send it to the libraries. And I thought, okay, what can I do to help my friends? Because everybody was freaking out. So I posted on Facebook, look, I'm starting the Nothing is Canceled book tour. If you're an author and you want to promote your book, all you have to do is make me a short video, call out another author and show their book, and call out an indie bookstore. And I thought I would have like four, and I had 200 after 3 days. So all I was doing was like processing these videos and posting about them. And then Ron Charles from the Washington Post called me and said, Caroline, what are you doing? And I said, I have no idea. And he said, well, keep doing it. So I kept doing it. And the next week it got worse. Then it was like 400 people. And then Jenna Blum, who I sort of knew, called me up and said, do you need help? Because I'm really good at this kind of stuff. And I said, oh my God, yes, please, please. So we banded together, and Jenna was right. Jenna was she's really, really great at scheduling stuff and managing stuff. And so we put together a Mighty Blaze, and it was her name, and we made her the CEO, and I was the co-founder. And we started reaching out to authors saying, would you like to come on? We're starting the Mighty Blaze and blah, blah, blah. And we reached out to newspapers, and, nobody was doing anything back then. So they were, except for you. And they were, the Washington Post, New York Times, Publishers Weekly, all these other places wanted to interview us and promote the stuff. And I was just overwhelmed because I'm really a shy person. And it was hard for me to get out and do this, but I started contacting every writer I had ever done something for. I mean, I once wrote a letter to John Irving 6 years ago where I asked him for nothing and just saying how much he meant to me. And he actually wrote me back saying, I read your letter 3 times. You didn't ask for anything, so I'm writing you back. And I wrote him back, and I wrote him and said, look, now I'm asking you for something. Please, will you come on a Mighty Blaze? And he said, yes. So, there I got to talk to my hero. And once I did that, it was easier to reach out to people. And I just aimed high and said, look, we're doing this because of the pandemic. We don't know how long it's going to last. and it started to grow. And all of a sudden we had 30 volunteers working for us. And then all of a sudden we had all these different shows. And then Jenna started doing these book festivals, and now we're doing a book review show, and it's like it's our fourth year now. And I don't go to any of the meetings anymore, do any of the strategy anymore, because I what's so great about this job is Jenna said, well, what do you want to do? Where are your strengths? And I said, I just want to talk to writers. And she said, okay, that's all you have to do. So that's all I have to do. And it's worked out great. And there's something, as you know, because I call you the North Star of all writers, which you are. When you do stuff like this for other people, it always somehow comes back to you and makes you feel good. It's like you get this golden halo around you. I love being part of the writers community. I love talking to writers, and I like helping them. And I've actually used you as a model a
Oh.
lot of times because no, because you're so you are so generous. And also, I don't know if you realize this or not, you could be the most, conceited person on the planet, and you're so real. You are so real. I love it when I talk to you and you will say, I'm really exhausted, or I'm worried about that. And I think that's totally genuine. And also, I just want to say that the people around you are that way too. When I went to your New Year, New Chapter, it was astonishing. It was like there must have been like 300, 400 people there. And the vibe was like everyone was radiating joy. Everyone. And it was not funny. It was not that weird competitiveness. There was none of that. And I thought, that's the kind of community I want to be a part of and I want to promote. So thank you.
Oh, that's a lovely thing to say. Um, my insecurity, I'm like, why would I be conceited? But okay, thanks.
Oh,
But anyway, I appreciate, look, we all have different ways that life could go. I think you and I share the same love of, I mean, I know that you and I share the same love of authors and literature and book and helping others. And
yeah.
it is for other people, but it feels good to us to help. So
Feels
there's
good
that.
to us to help.
Yeah.
Arthur, and I just want to say, you don't have to put this on the show, but I do just want to say, like, I don't think you realize how talented you are as a writer, like with your insecurity. I mean, really, both your books were amazing, amazing. And I promoted them on Mighty Blaze last week on our book club show.
Oh,
And also, you're real. You're this tremendously real person. Also, I hope I didn't offend you by saying anything about the Upper East Side. I didn't, right?
no, people make
Oh,
fun
good.
of the
Okay.
Upper East Side all the time. That's like part of.
Okay, 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 good, good, good.
No,
It's
thank you
just
for
for real.
saying that. I don't take offense. It's
Because I don't think of you as like that. I think of you as,
yeah.
a
No, I
regular
just,
person.
but I
Okay.
happen, there's the wrought iron right there. So, anyway.
Well, thank you
Anyway,
so much. Thank you so much, Zibby. This is just wonderful. And I really appreciate it. And anything I can do for you, you just give a holler.
same
And I'm
here.
there.
Okay, thanks.
Bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.